Okay, here we go. So more angle vocabulary. We've got complementary angles is our first one. Complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. So for example, if we've got a picture like this, where we know that this is a right angle, these two angles here would be complementary. So that would be 20 degrees and 70 degrees or something like that. Any two things that add to 90 is what those could be. It could be 30 and 60 or 65 and 25. Anything that makes those two things add to 90. Or we could have, so this is kind of the adjacent angle case where they share a side. We could also have angles that are complementary that are not touching each other. We could have one angle that's 30, and then we have another angle over here that's 60. These two would also be complementary angles. So they don't have to be touching to be complementary, but they can be. Okay, so there's our complementary angles. Next one is supplementary angles. And this would be two angles that add to 180 degrees. Okay. So again, like complementary, they could be touching each other or they could be not touching each other. Either way, we could say this is 120 degrees and this is 60 degrees. Those two angles would be supplementary because they add to 180. Okay. Then we have linear pair. So a linear pair are two angles that are supplementary and adjacent. They're supplementary and adjacent. So that means that they add to 180 and they share a ray. So the picture that we get for linear pair could be something like this. Whenever they share a line, whenever they're along the same line together like this, that would make them a linear pair. So that's kind of why the word linear is part of it. They're along a line together, and they make up that entire line. Okay. And then the last vocab word for the moment is going to be vertical angles. Vertical angles. Okay. So vertical angles are angles that are across from each other when formed by crossing lines. angles that are across from each other when formed by crossing lines. They are not adjacent, so they're not touching at all except for the vertex. That's the only thing they have in common is the vertex. Okay. So when we have crossing lines like this, vertical angles are ones that are across from one another. So my one pair of vertical angles would be these ones right here. And then another pair of vertical angles. Find another pen color. Would be these ones here that are crossing or that are across from each other side to side. So we have this pair and we have this pair. Those are both vertical angles. And the thing that's important about vertical angles is that they are congruent to each other. Vertical angles are congruent. Remember our congruent symbol here, angle symbol, and then I'm just abbreviating it as vert. But yeah, so both of these would be like maybe 110 degrees. Maybe both of these are 70 degrees. So vertical angles are congruent. They're across from each other. They share a common vertex, but they don't touch in any other way. Okay, so now we have 4 new words to describe angle pairs. We have complementary angles, where they add to 90, supplementary angles, where they add to 180, linear pair, where they're supplementary and adjacent, and then vertical, where they're made by crossing lines and they are across from one another. Okay, so we're going to go through some different example problems that we might see given each of these different types of angle pairings. And we'll start simple. Okay. So the easy example. We might be told something like one angle is 42 degrees. What is the measure of its complement? All right, so we've got the word complement, which means we're dealing with complementary angles, and we know one angle is 42 degrees. So looking back at your notes, we know that complementary angles add to 90 degrees. So all I have to do is go 90 minus 42, and that should give me my other angle, 48. So 48 degrees would be our answer there. Another version of this problem that you might see is something like this, where they show you a picture here, and you know that this one is 42 degrees, and they want to know what is your missing measure here. So it's the same idea. This is a way of doing it where you're asked with words. This is a way of doing it where you're asked with a picture. Either way, this should give us the idea that we're doing 90 minus 42. Okay. And you can do the same kind of thing with supplementary angles. We could go one angle is 131 degrees. What is the measure of its supplement? So we notice we've got the word supplement, so we're dealing with supplementary angles. And we've got 131 degrees for our initial angle, so we just have to take 180 minus 131, which should give us 49. Another way that they might show you this problem, though, is again with a picture. We might have something like this, where we have a linear pair, where we know that this angle is 131 degrees, and we want to know what our other angle is. Okay. So those are some different possibilities here of problems that you could see. All right. And then with vertical angles, usually they just give you pictures for that one. The most basic vertical angles picture is going to look like this. And we'll say that this is 97 degrees. And we want to know what that angle across from it, how many degrees does that one measure? And since we know vertical angles are congruent, I know that x will also be 97. So that one, you know, those ones are deceptively simple. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, you know, is it really that easy? That one is. It's 97 degrees because it's vertical with the one that's 97. The kind of one step harder of that is the same picture, but they might, you know, bust out the algebra here and end up with some algebra in our problem. So we'd have like 3x minus 37 and 2x plus 51. So we might see a problem like this. And when we see angles across from each other, the automatic thing we should be thinking, okay, vertical angles, what do I know about those? Well, vertical angles are congruent, right? So this is going to be kind of the first time where we're not just adding the angles and setting them equal to something else. This is going to be the case where we set them equal to each other. So we set up an equation, 2x plus 51 equals 3x minus 37. And this is going to work out so that we would have massive angles. So this is not a great example here, but, or it's not an example that works well with the picture, but we'll go with it. We're just going to solve for x here. Minus 2x gives us 51 equals x minus 37. Actually, here's what I'll do. We'll just change that into a plus. That'll make it a little bit better. We're going to make this a plus 37. So that's what we would be given in the problem instead. Okay. Then we would go on both sides. Minus 37, minus 37, 51, minus 37 gives us 14. So x is 14. Okay, so in a problem like this, since they're vertical angles, the main idea is that we're going to set them equal to each other now, instead of adding and setting equal to something else like we have done so far in most of our angle problems. So x is 14, and then if you wanted to, you could take that and plug it back in up here and go, okay, well, 2 times 14 plus 51 gives me 79 degrees. So my two angles would each be 79 degrees here. It's supposed to be an equal sign. Okay. So those are kind of most of the problems that you will see today will involve either identifying angles that are complementary or supplementary or vertical, and then figuring out if you were to set them equal, and solving for x, or figuring out what a supplement would be, or figuring out what another angle's complement would be, and things like that. Okay. Any questions up to this point? Any numbers that we're not sure where they came from? Steps that don't quite make sense to us? Okay. If you do at any point, type it in the chat or turn your mic on and say something. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at a couple of examples of some types of problems that you'll see in IXL. In C3 today, which will be part of our homework. So I don't think we're going to quite get to bisectors today, so we'll get to bisectors tomorrow. But some problems that you'll see like this in IXL. So they tend to be multiple choice, and you're just picking the one that matches with that angle. So for example, it says, which angle is vertical to CFE? So this is where you have to go to the picture and figure out CFE. That's this angle here, if you trace it out. So that's this angle on this side here. So the angle that's vertical to it is the one that's across from it. So that would be AFB, this angle here. And that does happen to be one of our choices. If it wasn't one of our choices, we would want to look and go, okay, well, is BFA one of the choices? Because remember, angles can be written in two ways when they're written with three letters like that. So the vertical angle to CFE is angle AFB. They're across from each other. Another one, which angle is vertical to BEC? So looking here, we've got BEC, that's this angle. So go ahead and try this one on your own. Type in the chat, what angle is vertical to BEC? What do we think? Samia's got one of them. One of the ways of writing it. And Gavin's got the other way of writing it. Yeah, so BEC, this angle here. DEA or AED would be this angle over here. They're vertical, they are across from each other. And DEA is the one that shows up in our multiple choice list. So that's the one that we would pick. All right, now we've got complementary. We're switching up the vocab word. Which angle is complementary to angle 5? All right, so here's angle 5. And an important thing to know about when you've got a group of angles like this, if one of those angles is 90 degrees, like this one, angle 2, that means that all of the angles, angle 3 and angle 4, are also 90 degrees, and that together, these two angles are 90. So we might see pictures like this, angle 1 would be the one that is complementary to angle 5. These two together will add to 90. You can also kind of do it visually with some of these. You can go, okay, well, complementary means they add to 90. And here's angle 5. If I add any of these other angles to angle 5, that would make it much, much bigger than 90. So you can also kind of process of elimination it that way. All right, which angle is adjacent to AEB? So here's AEB. In this picture, there are two angles that are touching angle AEB, right? We've got this one here, and we have this one here. Is this one where you can pick multiple? Nope, it's only a single choice. So that means that we need to figure out which one of them is represented down here in our multiple choice list. So we could pick BEC or CEB. That would be the name of this one. And then DEA or AED would be the name of this one that's touching AEB. And it looks like this one, DEA, is the one that's listed here. Okay. We'll do one more here together. Which angle is congruent to angle AGC? So here's AGC. So that's a big angle right here. If we're looking for an angle that's congruent, typically we're looking for vertical angles here, because that's the only relationship that we have where the angles would be the same, where they would be equal to each other. So AGC, we're looking for something that's vertical to that. So it's going to be on the other side here. What do we think? Can anyone type in the chat, come up with an angle that's vertical to AGC? This one's a little bit harder, but I think we can do it. Yep, Owen's got it. It is DGF or FGD. DGF is vertical. It's congruent to AGC. Okay, another way that you can kind of go through these is by looking down here at your list of multiple choice options and kind of doing it that way and going, okay, well, BGC, where's that? BGC, that looks a lot smaller than CGA or AGC, the one that we're supposed to find one that's congruent to it. Or CGE. CGE, again, that one looks a lot smaller. And they're not vertical because they're touching. And then EGA, that's another one that it looks smaller and they're also kind of overlapping or they're touching there. So we don't want to use that one. So DGF, that's another way to kind of go through and, okay, process of elimination here. Which one could it be? Okay. So your assignment for today is going to be 2 IXL sections. It's going to be one with problems like this, and then it's going to be another one with problems like the ones that we did on the paper where it'll say like, you know, one angle is 42 degrees. What is the measure of its complement and stuff like that. I'm going to post those and then we'll go ahead and get started. Class today is over at 11, so come back at 10:55. And we will do a quick exit ticket and kind of debrief. Okay. So that should be posted now. You've got your 2 IXL sections. Don't forget to log in with Clever and come back at 10:55 for the exit ticket. If you need any help or have questions, please stick around and you can get help there. Oh, and I should stop recording now.